Colonel Sidley, I want to first start off by saying how much of an honor it is to have you as our guest today on the show.
Well, Rob, thanks so much. It's an honor for me to talk to you. Thank you for inviting me.
Colonel, if you don't mind, could you give us a little background about yourself? What made you decide to join the military and make a career out of the United States military?
Well, Rob, I've been in the Army for over 30 years. So I came in during the Cold War Reagan era. I was a tanker, cavalry, and I joined up as an ROTC cadet because I ran out of money and I needed enough money to get through school. And it really isn't very, not very patriotic, but that's why I joined. And then I got in, and I loved it. I love the sense of mission. I love the sense of camaraderie. I love the idea of selfless service, and particularly I like the people that I serve with who seem to be doing this for all the right reasons, and that's why I stayed in. The other reason I stayed in is because right now I get to serve with young men and women who are in the Corps cadets at West Point, and they are some of the best young men and women in America.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, we're here to discuss the book, The West Point History of the Civil War, but real quick, before we get into that, I think it's important for our listeners to know why you are considered such an expert on this topic. And I guess what I'm asking you is to brag on yourself a little bit. What got you so interested in this topic? Is it something you chose to learn? Is it something you learned by just doing your duty as an officer? How do you know so much about this topic?
Well, one of the great things about this job is that the Army has sent me to schooling. So I have a Ph.D. in military history, as all the people that wrote this book is. But the reason that the Civil War really calls to me and that I know so much is because I teach cadets this course. So the book itself, The West Point History of the Civil War, is the same text that we teach to cadets. And that's why it enthralls me and interests me so much, because I want cadets to understand the history of their country and the history of their military. And we think that it's not just West Point cadets that need that, but every American would do well to know about the Civil War and about warfare in general. But really, that's who I am. I mean, I've served in tank and infantry and armor units all over the globe. But what I keep coming back to, my passion is teaching cadets and teaching students about history.
So tell us a little bit about the book itself. You know, there's countless books available about the Civil War. What makes this book stand out, above the rest?
Well, I think there are a couple things. The first is we've been doing it at West Point for a long time. We've been teaching Civil War at West Point since 1863, really midway through the Civil War. And we taught it to Pershing, to Patton, to Eisenhower, to Bradley, to Schwarzkopf. We've been doing this a long time. We know what we're doing. The second part is that while you'll see these great maps, nobody does maps better than West Point. Mm-hmm. And what we've done in this case is taken the product that we teach to cadets, which is a digital version. In fact, all cadets have iPads, and they take the text on this iPad, and there's interactive maps. There's immersive, what we call widgets. There are timelines. There's an enormous number of images that we think make the history of the Civil War immersive, and that they understand the full ramifications of what war means. Now, and we've taken that in the hardcover book and taken that in a way so you can see what that's like. And if you've seen it, it's a big book. I mean, it thing weighs a ton, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like 400 and something pages, right?
Right. And that's only 6 chapters of what is a total of 71. That's the West Point history of warfare that we're going to release over the next 2 years to the American people so that they have a better understanding of the history of warfare. We Americans are not a militaristic people. You know, we don't cotton to fancy uniforms or parades, but boy, we go to war a lot. And what we want to do is to help educate the American people on warfare.
So why do you think it's so important for the average American citizen to read and, more importantly, to learn the history of warfare within the United States?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. You know, again, we go to war all the time. I don't think there's a country on the globe that goes to war as often as we do. And if you think about our history, we are born in war during the American Revolution, and we are united as a nation during the Civil War. And if I can think back my career over the last 30 years, there's been hardly a stop of the war that somebody in the U.S. Army, somebody in uniform, have been deployed fighting. We go to war all the time, and if it's something that is so inherent to who we are as Americans, we should know more about it. And a lot of people think that if you study about war, it somehow makes you like war. Well, of course that's not true. We don't like war. Soldiers don't like war. But we need to know about it so that we can be honest with our politicians, and so that our politicians can be honest with us about what's involved every time we don the uniform and the battle flags unfurl and we go to war.
Now, a majority of people don't think about this, but a project like this doesn't come about easy, I'm sure. You've done some amazing things in your career, but this has to be a very proud moment for you, bringing an idea like this to fruition, right?
Oh, you're so true. I mean, this is really the lifetime dream of mine, is to create a new textbook for West Point cadets and to go from Plato to NATO in Afghanistan. That's the time frame from the ancients all the way to fighting in Afghanistan, and to find a way to reach these cadets. And what we find is that to reach cadets, that's the same thing that to reach all Americans. And the West Point history of the Civil War is the first way that we want to do that. But it certainly is the pinnacle of my career to have been involved in a project that has taken 50 historians and 5 cartographers and designers and project managers and really dozens and dozens of people to create this project. It is something that all of us involved are incredibly proud of.
You know, on top of that, it's getting such great reviews all over the internet. And I've read where this is like the first time in over 40 years the U.S. Military Academy has authorized a new military history series that bears the name West Point. You know, and 40 years ago, and depending on how you really want to break it down, we didn't have an internet. So it's got to be nice to see that response from readers all over the world after all the hard work that's been put into it.
It really is. You know, we are experts in military history, and you may wonder, well, why do we need more new history? But one of the ways, the stories I tell about that is that during World War II, when the last book was published, The Secrets of Ultra and how we broke the German codes during World War II, that hadn't been declassified. So our entire understanding of World War II had changed after the last series of books that we wrote. So what we get to do now is to take the latest in scholarship and the latest in technology and marry them together to create what we think is, in a way, the future of the past, a new way to understand history through digital interactive means, and also through this large book that we did with Simon & Schuster that has the best maps we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. So is there any other projects that you're working on now since you finished this up? Or are you just kind of laid back now and taking it all in?
I wish. We've got the West Point history of the Vietnam War is coming out in a couple of months digitally. We're going to have the West Point history of the Korean War coming out in the spring. And then next fall, the West Point history of World War II, Volume 1 will come out. So we have got warfare, again, every single war you could think of in the Western experience is coming out over the next 2 years. And to try to figure out how to create more maps and to create new ways of doing it. We're also thinking about battlefield apps that you can take to the battlefield and be able to show more clearly what's happening at Gettysburg or Antietam.
Now, Colonel Seidule, is there anything I left out that you want to add before we start to wrap this thing up?
Well, the one thing I would say is that if you're interested in the digital product, go to the westpointhistoryofwarfare.com, which has great examples of that digital content, which is exactly the same thing that the West Point cadets are doing. In fact, we just finished the Civil War with our classes, and this coming Monday, we start our finals. Now,
is there any other place that people can purchase this book?
Yes, they can purchase it on Amazon or they go to Barnes & Nobles, Costco. I think it's on sale wherever books are sold.
Okay. One last question for you. You know, Colonel, if you were retiring today at this point in your career, how would you hope to be remembered?
Oh, that I was part of a team. I think that would be the way I would want to do it. I was part of a team in the units I was in and the Army I was in that tried to protect the American people in the best way I knew how. But the Army is a great team that is looking out for the best interests of the Army, of the American people. And I think that's what I'd want to be known as, part of the team.
Well, Colonel, I want to tell you how much of an honor it is speaking to you tonight, and I want to thank you once again for joining us on the show. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you.
Rob, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
The 25th Hour Radio Show.